One man's attempt to foster dialogue between two parties is another man's, quote, angry black guy trying to destroy a white policeman. Guess who that man is? Yep, our old friend Rush Limbaugh. The conservative talk show host is the leader of a mob of right-wingers who are now openly attacking President Obama. Not because of his politics, but because of his skin color. Kind of the same way they tried to attack his Supreme Court nominee for being Latina and a woman during her recent confirmation hearings. The most telling comments about Judge Sotomayor's heritage came from the white Republican men on the Senate Judiciary Committee. For the right wing these days, the rise of minorities is so unsettling that they seem to be suffering their own identity crisis, as if their biggest question is, I know who you are, but what am I?
They're finally hearing me once he's an angry black guy. I do believe that about the president. I do believe he's angry.
This president, I think, has exposed himself as a guy over and over and over again who has a deep-seated hatred for white people or the white culture. I don't know what it is. This guy is, I believe, a racist.
This guy that they elected, who they thought was all of these wonderful, perfect things, is now behaving as a community organizer and is fanning the flames of race. Here you have a black president trying to destroy a white policeman.
Time to bring in Salon.com editor-in-chief and columnist Joan Walsh, who's written about this very subject for her website. This afternoon, in response to that column, Rush Limbaugh called her a racist and a, quote, magic honky. Sorry to bring that up, but good evening, Joan.
Good evening, Richard. Thank you.
That's quite a badge of honor you got there. He actually called me recently a dunce or an idiot or something sophisticated. So I just want to ask, does him calling you a racist pretty much confirm the exact point you were making in the column, that Limbaugh and others are merely projecting their own racism onto the president?
Absolutely. It is all about projection. He is clearly showing his fear at seeing a black man as an equal, as a leader. And, you know, for Rush, this goes back quite a ways. Remember, he was fired by ESPN because he disparaged Donovan McNabb and insisted that he was only a black quarterback because of affirmative action when he was one of the stars at the time. He also has a really kind of alarming habit of making sexual references and sexual paranoia, talking about having to bend over and grab his ankles for this black president, and he wouldn't do it. I mean, the man is frightened of black people and projects it onto Obama, who, whether you like him, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, the notion that he hates white people is ludicrous, and they are just trying to throw everything at him that they can, and race has been divisive in our society. We know this, and they think it's going to work.
You know, one of the interesting things for me is that it sounds like the usual coded messages and the veiled comments have been thrown aside in favor of really quite blatant racial attacks. Do you think this kind of talk is acceptable to middle America, to the suburban independent voters who have really decided recent elections?
No, and I thought that the Crowley, the beer summit, I know we're not supposed to call it that, and also his press conference was really kind of a wonderful moment. I know it was all staged, Richard, and I don't mean to be naive, but you know there was a moment last week when both Rush and other right-wing blowhards were trying to kind of recruit and use Jim Crowley, and you could really have imagined perhaps a different sort of man maybe falling for it, feeling aggrieved and saying the problem is this black president. But instead you have this guy come out and really say very gracious things about both Professor Gates as well as the president and vice president. And so I think it is failing. I think middle Americans like Jim Crowley don't want to hear this racist talk. They're not falling for it. And, you know, someday we may find that Rush and GlennBeck were paid by the Democratic Party. That's all I can think of in terms of why they'd be out there doing such damage to the Republican Party.
We'll have to add that conspiracy to all the others floating around right now. And there is more on the right-wing blogosphere, because some are suggesting that the president's health care plan is a backdoor for slavery reparations. How fringy is this going to get, and when and how does it go mainstream?
Well, you know, it is fringy, but I will tell you that is the thing I worry about. I mean, you and I both know that race and ethnicity has been used to divide us, and specifically to create fear around people getting jobs that someone else deserves or people getting support. NPR featured an interview with a man who said that Obama wants to take health care away from whites and give it to minorities, which of course isn't true. So in a time of economic crisis and chaos, there is a little bit more potential for these scare tactics to make people think they're going to take it away from me and give it to them. I worry about that. Not the overt racism so much being widespread, but a kind of economic insecurity and a kind of tribalism that can be fanned in times of trouble.
Well, that's got to be another reason why we all hope this economy gets better sometime soon. So Joan Walsh, editor-in-chief of Salon.com, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Richard.